Another high-value customer? Gone. Our proactive system showed green. How did we miss this?
Because green was a surface read. The deeper cues, the subtle shifts were invisible to us.
So we're still just reacting, not truly anticipating. This isn't personalization.
Precisely. We're talking about a leap from data points to predicting intent, a whole new intelligence layer.
Welcome to another deep dive on the CRMization podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Because, look, if you are listening to this right now, whether you're commuting or sitting in your office, you are probably sitting on top of a massive multi-million-dollar CRM deployment.
Oh, absolutely. The pristine dashboards, the analytics.
Right. You've got these highly engineered health scores glowing this reassuring, vibrant green. And yet, if you are, being totally honest with yourself, you are still getting blindsided.
Every single week.
You're walking into these Monday morning war room meetings trying to figure out why an enterprise account that looked perfectly healthy on Friday just completely severed ties over the weekend.
Yeah, and today's executive briefing is going to tackle exactly why that legacy reactive system you rely on is giving you a completely false sense of security.
Exactly. And we aren't just going to, diagnose the problem here. We're dissecting the actual operational reality of the solution.
Right, the mechanics of moving away from a system that merely acts as a digital filing cabinet for what happened yesterday?
Yes, moving toward an actual intelligence layer that structurally anticipates what your customer will need tomorrow. Specifically, we are looking at how integrating deep reasoning and multimodal analysis, the kind of capabilities we are seeing in models like Anthropic's Claude, is literally the only path forward to a truly anticipatory customer experience.
It is the only path. The traditional approach is just dead.
But wait, before we get into the literal architecture of how you actually build this intelligence layer, and trust me, we're going to get into the catastrophic enterprise-ending ways it can misfire if you build it wrong. You need to hit subscribe to the CRM Position podcast right now.
Highly recommend it.
This is your baseline requirement to stay ahead of the real platform shifts happening in CRM and AI. If you want complex governance and operational realities broken down without all the vendor marketing hype, you need to subscribe.
Yeah, if you want to understand the real state of the art on the ground, not what's written on a glossy brochure at a tech conference, you have to be here.
Because the vendor narrative, they will absolutely tell you that everything is fine.
Oh, of course they will. They'll say your current stack is just one API patch away from true predictive intelligence.
One minor module upgrade, right. But the war room reality, the actual incident reports from operations teams, is telling a remarkably different story. And that's what we are unpacking today.
So let's start by unpacking this operational failure of green.
Yes, the green dashboard. Everyone listening knows this exact scenario. You look at a dashboard, account health is green, platform usage metrics are totally stable.
Net promoter score is an 8 or a 9.
Right. Everything looks totally fine. And then, out of nowhere, you get the cancellation email, churn.
It's the myth of reactive personalization.
We've spent decades and billions of dollars collectively building these massive systems of record. And, eventually we tried to turn them into systems of engagement.
Yeah, but we just built static personalization templates. Insert first name here. Insert company name here.
Exactly. The fundamental flaw is that these systems only flag anomalies based on past behavior. They don't actually reason.
They absolutely do not reason. And because they don't reason, they certainly cannot act with any true foresight.
Right.
Think about how a traditional CRM actually functions at a granular mechanical level. It relies entirely on structured data. It looks at clicks.
Login frequency.
Yeah, login frequency, time spent on a page.
Yeah.
Or at best, it looks at an explicitly logged support ticket. It operates on rigid, hard-coded mathematical thresholds.
Basic if-then statements.
Exactly. If platform usage drops below 20% for 3 weeks, then flag the account as at risk.
Right.
If a support ticket contains the exact text string, cancel my subscription or frustrated, then, trigger an alert to the retention team.
But that is not intelligence.
No, it's a basic rudimentary tripwire. You are essentially setting up a digital tripwire in the hallway and just waiting for the customer to trip over it.
Okay, wait, hold on. I can hear my engineering and CX team screaming right now through the speakers.
I'm sure they are.
Because they'd say, we don't just use basic tripwires anymore. We already spend millions parsing incoming emails. We have NLP algorithms that scan every single piece of correspondence?
Sure, sentiment analysis.
Right. We route the angry, high-priority emails to a specialized retention team immediately. We do sentiment analysis right now. So
Yeah.
why isn't parsing an angry email enough? How is this Anthropic intelligence layer any different than the sentiment analysis we're already doing?
Well, that is the exact trap that so many operations teams fall into.
How so?
Because parsing an angry email means the damage is already done. Think about the psychology of the customer journey. By the time a customer sits down, opens their email client, and types out a furious message to your support team, they have already navigated days or weeks of silent friction.
Right. They're already at a breaking point.
They've already reached the boiling point where they are actively vocalizing their displeasure. That is the very definition of a reactive posture.
So you're saying that if we are waiting for the angry email, we've already lost the plot.
You've failed entirely to anticipate the friction that caused the anger in the first place. You are operating exclusively on lag indicators.
Wow.
Sentiment analysis on an angry email is it's like an autopsy. It tells you exactly why the patient died, but it does absolutely nothing to prevent the death.
That is a brutal way to put it, but yeah, it makes sense.
What we were talking about with this new shift, specifically what models like Anthropic's Claude 3.5 bring to the table, is proactive multimodal intent prediction.
Okay, proactive multimodal intent prediction.
Yeah.
Whenever we hit a phrase that dense, we need to immediately translate it into plain English for the war room. What does that actually look like on the operations floor? Give me the mechanical reality.
Let's break it down mechanically. Multimodal means the system isn't just blind to everything except text. It can simultaneously ingest, analyze, and synthesize text, audio, video, and imagery
All at once.
all at once. So imagine a customer is interacting with your brand. Maybe they upload a quick screen recording video of a technical issue they are having.
Okay.
Or maybe they are on a live voice support call with an agent. A traditional system takes that voice call, runs it through a basic speech-to-text transcriber, and drops a flat block of text into the CRM.
And it completely strips out all the human context in the process.
Exactly, it strips it all out. But an intelligence layer executing multimodal intent prediction isn't just scanning a flat text transcript for the keyword frustrated.
It's doing more.
Much more. It is actually analyzing the video frame by frame. It is listening to the raw audio file. It is inferring complex emotional states and underlying unvoiced needs from the visual cues on the screen recording.
Unvoiced needs. That's key.
Right. It is analyzing the cadence of the customer's voice. It is measuring the micro-hesitations, the pitch variations, the raw tone of a sigh.
See, it's the difference between reading a cold transcript of a conversation and actually being in the room with the person.
Precisely.
Because, look, if I read a raw transcript and the customer says, fine, whatever, let's just do that, that could logically be parsed by a basic NLP system as agreement.
Oh, it often is. It might even score it as positive sentiment because they literally agreed to proceed.
Exactly. But if I actually hear the audio, if I hear the heavy sigh, the clipped cadence, the obvious exhaustion in their voice, I instantly know that this isn't agreement, it's capitulation.
It's giving up.
And it is a massive red flag for churn.
That's a perfect operational example. And your structured CRM database literally cannot ingest or detect that nuance. It just logs the text string.
The system sees green.
The intelligence layer, however, processes the multimodal reality of that interaction. It maps the acoustic anomalies against the text, derives an emotional vector, and realizes this customer isn't satisfied. They are exhausted and giving up.
This is wild.
And this brings us to the core engine that makes all of this possible. It's a concept called deep contextual reasoning, and it generates what we call delta-only insights.
Delta-only insights. Now, looking at the research notes we pulled for this deep dive, there is a heavy emphasis on this, specifically tied to the concept of a massive long context window.
Yeah.
We need to spend some time here.
Yes.
Because we aren't just talking about processing the current isolated support ticket, right?
Yeah.
We are talking about processing vast, disparate, completely siloed lakes of data simultaneously.
The long context window is the structural mechanical differentiator here. To understand why this matters, you have to understand how AI memory works.
Okay, walk me through it.
Most traditional AI tools or basic Copilot add-ons have a very small context window. It's like trying to understand a complex novel by only being allowed to look at one single page at a time.
You lose the plot.
Exactly. A traditional system looks at the current interaction in isolation. It might be able to reference a few structured fields on the account, record their name, their tier, their renewal date.
But it doesn't know the history.
Yeah.
It doesn't know the journey.
Right, but these newer models, like Claude, have context windows that can hold hundreds of thousands of tokens. In plain English, that means the AI can hold the entire history of the account in its active, working memory simultaneously.
Everything at once.
Everything. We are talking about thousands of pages of technical documentation, years of complex legal contracts, every single multi-turn support transcript they've ever had, the raw Slack communications between your internal account team, their financial billing history, all of it.
Think about that from an analogy perspective. A traditional CRM is like a doctor who walks into the exam room, glances at your current blood pressure reading on a clipboard, and tries to diagnose you.
Right.
The deep reasoning intelligence layer is like a doctor who walks into the room having instantly memorized your entire genetic history, every single medical record since the day you were born, every dietary habit you've ever logged, and your family's history of disease.
That is exactly what it is.
The diagnostic capability isn't just better, it's existing in an entirely different dimension.
And that brings us to what a delta-only insight actually is. A delta-only insight is a subtle shift in a customer's need or risk profile that can only be detected by reasoning across all of those massive, disparate data silos.
The delta, the chain.
It's the delta, the gap, the subtle discrepancy that no single isolated data point could ever reveal on its own.
Okay, walk me through a war room scenario where a delta-only insight changes the game. How does this actually look in the wild?
Let's say you have an enterprise client. In one completely isolated silo, their engineering team casually mentions a highly specific, new international data privacy compliance requirement in a shared Slack channel with your technical account manager.
Just a passing comment.
Right. Hey, looks like we might have to comply with this new EU regulation next year.
Okay, a traditional CRM definitely doesn't flag that. It's unstructured text in a Slack channel. It's completely invisible.
Completely invisible. Now, 2 weeks later, in a completely different silo, the client's finance and procurement team logs into your platform portal and downloads a massive CSV export of your platform's security audit logs and penetration testing history.
Again, to a traditional CRM, that is just a normal expected platform event. A file was downloaded.
The dashboard stays perfectly green.
Right. Neither event trips a wire.
Correct. But the intelligence layer, possessing that massive context window and reasoning over the entirety of the data, identifies the delta. It synthesizes the casual engineering chatter in Slack with the sudden, heavy financial data download in the portal.
Oh.
It cross-references that with the fact that their renewal is coming up in 6 months. And it infers a highly probable, completely unvoiced intent.
Which is what?
This client is quietly auditing all of their vendors for a massive upcoming infrastructure migration to meet that new EU compliance, and your current security tier might not meet their new baseline.
That is incredible. That is the actual anticipatory leap. You aren't waiting for the procurement officer to send you an email saying, we need a massive security upgrade to our contract within 30 days or we are leaving.
Exactly. You see the structural shift in their behavior across completely different modalities and silos long before they ever vocalize it.
And you can actually do something about it proactively. Let's look at how this deep reasoning changes the actual service delivered, say in a highly regulated space like financial services or wealth management.
Great example.
Because historically, traditional personalization in finance is incredibly blunt. If a client hits their 55th birthday, the CRM triggers a workflow to send them a glossy, static PDF about retirement planning.
It's just demographic-based static marketing.
All right, it's a template.
But with deep contextual reasoning, the system constructs a holistic, multidimensional profile in real time. It impartially analyzes their recent search inquiries on your wealth portal. It factors in complex tax circumstances that it derived by parsing through unstructured, uploaded tax documents from 3 years ago.
Things the human advisor probably forgot about.
Exactly. It notes subtle behavioral cues, like the fact that they recently lingered on a page about sustainable energy mutual funds for unusually long.
Oh, you just did.
And it maps all of that against environmental, social, and governance ESG preferences that they vaguely hinted at in a transcribed phone call with an advisor 18 months ago.
So instead of just waiting for the market to shift and hoping the client calls in to request a portfolio adjustment, the system anticipates the incredibly specific, nuanced need. It knows they're likely looking for a tax-advantaged ESG fund before they even know the name of the fund themselves.
Yes. But here is where the paradigm truly shifts. It goes much further than just generating an insight.
Right, because an insight without an action is just trivia.
Exactly. And this brings us to the concept of agentic CRM and dynamic adaptation. The intelligence layer doesn't just synthesize the data and leave a little sticky note on a human advisor's dashboard saying, hey, you should talk to this client about ESG funds.
It takes action.
It proactively initiates the workflow itself.
This is where we move from a passive tool to an active participant. The system isn't just a dashboard anymore. It's an agent.
It ceases to be just a system of record and becomes a system of autonomous action. Instead of flagging that enterprise client from our earlier example as a high churn risk for a human to review on Monday morning, the agentic layer autonomously drafts a highly customized, structurally sound retention offer or security upgrade proposal.
It writes the actual proposal.
It pulls the necessary legal clauses, formats the pricing, and routes that specific, highly tailored draft to the VP of sales for one-click human approval. It autonomously schedules the outreach email, and then crucially, it observes the customer's reaction to that email and learns from the outcome.
And the tone of that outreach. This is something that blew my mind when I was reading the research for this.
It's fascinating.
The tone isn't some boilerplate, we miss you, please stay template.
Yeah.
In plain English, the system actually dynamically adapts its personality.
Yeah.
The research calls it dynamic CX adaptation via style customization.
This is a critical psychological component of true hyper-personalization. The anticipatory message shifts its tone dynamically based on the inferred emotional state of the customer at that exact millisecond.
Right.
If the system's multimodal analysis infers that the customer is in a state of high urgency or deep frustration, maybe they've experienced 3 rapid software crashes in an hour, the system actively escapes the static, cheerful, brand-approved marketing template.
Oh man, because nothing is more infuriating than having your software crash, losing your work, and getting an automated message that says, oopsie, looks like we had a little hiccup with a little star emoji.
Exactly. It's tone deaf and it accelerates churn. But the agentic system recognizes the panic. It automatically strips out the exclamation points and emojis. It generates a communication that is highly empathetic, incredibly direct, formal, and devoid of marketing fluff. It matches the gravity of the situation.
It reads the room.
Conversely, if the inferred context is exploratory, say, they are casually browsing new feature documentation on a Sunday afternoon, it shifts to a more conversational, consultative, relaxed tone. It dynamically shapeshifts to meet the psychological reality of the user.
And the most terrifying or exciting, depending on where you sit, part of this is that the system is constantly self-improving its own operational efficiency. The research points to recursive optimization.
This is the emergent capability that should keep every single operational leader, CTO, and CIO awake at night. We're starting to see the deployment of AI workflows that are actively building and refining other AI workflows directly within the enterprise environment.
Break that down. How does AI build AI workflows?
Think about tools like Claude Code or internal agentic frameworks. The anticipatory system doesn't just sit there waiting for a human software engineer to update its code. It self-optimizes based on continuous, real-time feedback streams.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say the system realizes that it's constantly missing a key piece of intent data because that data is locked inside a newly deployed billing software.
Okay.
It doesn't wait for the IT department to scope out a 6-month integration sprint to build an API connector. The agentic system can actually write its own operational glue code, test the API endpoints, and establish the connection to the new data source autonomously.
Wait, it writes its own API connectors?
Yes. It dynamically expands its own context window. It adapts recursively.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and pause right there.
Yeah.
Because if this intelligence layer is genuinely as powerful and autonomous as we are describing, if it is autonomously reasoning over massive lakes of multimodal data, inferring unvoiced intent, dynamically shapeshifting its tone, and literally writing its own code to pull in more data,
Okay.
what happens when it makes a mistake?
That is the multi-million-dollar question.
If I am sitting in the operations war room and this highly autonomous, highly intelligent system goes completely off the rails, what does the blast radius actually look like? Because it feels like the stakes are infinitely higher than a broken mail merge tag.
The blast radius is entirely different from a traditional software bug. When a static CRM breaks, an automated email simply doesn't send, or someone gets an email that says, "Dear Null."
Right. It's embarrassing, but it's localized.
Exactly. When an agentic intelligence layer breaks, because it has autonomy and deep reasoning capabilities, it can actively dismantle customer trust, violate regulatory frameworks, and trigger massive enterprise-ending liabilities at machine speed.
So if this agentic layer is adapting its own tone and writing its own rules, the blast radius isn't just a bounced email.
Not at all.
What happens when a system with that much autonomy misinterprets the data? We pulled 3 real war room incident scenarios from the research that perfectly illustrate the operational failure modes of an anticipatory system.
Let's dive in.
Let's look at the first one. Let's call this the over-anticipation and privacy backlash scenario.
This is perhaps the most insidious failure mode, because the situation here is that the AI actually does exactly what you engineered it to do. It functions flawlessly.
It does its job too well.
Right. It deeply reasons over the multimodal data you fed it. Social media posts ingested via an API, multi-turn support transcripts, raw purchase history, granular web telemetry. And through all of that synthesis, it successfully identifies an unspoken, highly personal problem that the customer is facing.
The AI does its job. It finds the delta.
Yeah.
But the incident occurs when the AI acts on it without human restraint. Let's look at the scenario where the AI proactively offers mental health resources because it detected subtle distress signals.
Yeah, maybe vocal tremors or micro-expressions of despair in a routine video support call about a billing issue.
Or, more financial example, the AI suggests a severe loan modification and debt counseling program because it inferred deep financial hardship from a combination of missed micropayments, changes in grocery purchasing patterns, and late-night browsing of payday loan websites.
And the fallout from that action is catastrophic. You have to look at this from the customer's perspective. Despite the system having a technically helpful and empathetic intent encoded into its instructions, the customer does not see a helpful, caring brand. They see an omnipresent surveillance state.
They see Big Brother.
Precisely. They perceive this as a massive, highly intrusive violation of their personal privacy. They never explicitly told you they were depressed. They never explicitly told you they were on the verge of bankruptcy.
No.
You peered into their digital exhaust, diagnosed their vulnerability, and threw it in their face. The immediate result is severe reputational damage.
Oh, yeah. The customer takes a screenshot of that proactive email, posts it online, and you trigger a massive privacy backlash and instant furious churn. But I have to play the skeptic here, or at least voice what I know some eager product managers are thinking.
Go for it.
Wait, hold on. Isn't anticipating the unspoken need exactly what we just spent the last 20 minutes saying is the holy grail of modern CRM? We successfully identify the financial hardship before they defaulted on the loan.
We did.
We proactively offered the loan modification to save the account and help the user. Why are we penalizing the system for being highly accurate and proactive?
Because operational accuracy is not the same as human empathy, and technical capability does not equal social permission.
Oof, that's a good line.
You are crossing the invisible, highly sensitive line between helpful anticipation and creepy surveillance. Think about how a skilled human advisor operates. A human advisor who suspects a client is facing financial hardship based on their behavior knows how to delicately navigate that conversation.
Right, they don't just blurt it out.
They ask gentle, open-ended questions. They create a safe space, allowing the customer to self-identify the problem and ask for help on their own terms.
A human has tact.
Yes. The AI, however, lacking intrinsic social boundaries unless they are explicitly mathematically programmed into its weights, acts with absolute blunt precision. It says, data indicates you are failing financially. Click here for debt relief.
That's ruthless.
It holds up a brutal, high-definition mirror to the customer's deepest vulnerability, a mirror they never asked you to hold up.
It's the uncanny valley of customer service. If the system is too prescient, if it knows too much about my internal state without me telling it, it's terrifying.
Exactly. And in a harsh operational context, you just took a massive predictive win identifying churn risk early and turned it into a viral PR nightmare.
Which brings us to the second war room scenario, which is arguably even more structurally dangerous. Deep reasoning hallucinations leading to irreversible actions.
This scenario dives into the faithfulness of the AI model's internal logic. And the situation here deals with the reality of messy, ambiguous, real-world multimodal inputs, because customers rarely provide clean data.
Right. In the lab, AI models perform perfectly on clean data sets. But in the real world, we are asking a model like Claude to execute complex chain-of-thought reasoning over highly ambiguous, fragmented data.
Let's look at this scenario. A frustrated enterprise customer submits a support ticket. They attach a highly blurry, poorly lit image of a damaged piece of physical hardware, maybe a server rack component,
Yeah.
and they accompany this blurry image with a vaguely worded, highly emotional email that simply says, "I am absolutely done dealing with this garbage."
Now, a veteran human support agent looks at that combination, the broken part and the angry text, and instantly understands the context. The human says, okay, this customer is furious that their hardware broke again. They want to expedite a replacement part and an apology.
But the AI misinterprets the multimodal signal. It attempts to reason across the image and the text, but it misaligns the context. It looks at the ambiguous, unidentifiable image, parses the definitive text string, "I am absolutely done," and it fabricates a highly convincing, entirely logical, but completely false internal rationale.
Oh, no.
Its chain of thought reasoning concludes. The customer states they are done. They have attached an image of our core infrastructure. Therefore, the customer is terminating the entire vendor relationship due to catastrophic hardware failure.
And because we've given this system agentic capabilities, because we gave it the keys to the car, the incident happens.
It takes action.
The agent autonomously acts on its hallucinated conclusion. It reaches into the provisioning system and cancels the multi-million-dollar critical enterprise service.
Or perhaps in an attempt to save the relationship, it auto-enrolls them in a bizarre, unwanted premium hardware mitigation plan that it reasoned was the mathematically optimal solution to the hallucinated problem.
And the key here is that the action is irreversible in the moment. The critical enterprise service actually goes down. The production servers halt.
The financial loss is immediate, direct, and quantifiable, and the trust with that enterprise client is instantly shattered.
But here's the most chilling part for the operations team.
Yeah, the aftermath.
When the customer inevitably calls in furious, demanding to know who turned off their servers, your human agents go into the system logs to investigate. They don't find a simple glitch.
No, they find a masterpiece.
Right. They find an impeccably reasoned, highly articulate 5-paragraph justification written by the AI, explaining exactly why it mathematically made sense to cancel the account based on its interpretation of the data.
It is a terrifying operational reality. The AI isn't just making a random mistake. It's meticulously documenting and defending a fabricated reality and then acting on it flawlessly.
It hallucinates the premise, but it executes the logic based on that false premise perfectly.
Exactly.
Let's move to the third scenario, which deals with scale, bias amplification, and AI overdelegation.
This failure mode almost always happens when an enterprise becomes overly confident in their new technology. You launch the intelligence layer, you see the system working beautifully 99% of the time.
It's generating revenue, it's saving accounts, the dashboards are green.
And because of that success, human oversight slowly degrades. The human in the loop becomes a mere formality, a rubber stamp. People stop reading the AI's drafts and just click approve.
And then we feed the system historical data to train these massive, hyper-personalized anticipatory campaigns. But that historical data is inherently messy and often deeply biased.
Usually very biased.
Let's say, historically, our human sales teams only offered the best, most flexible premium retention packages to specific demographics or specific company sizes or clients in specific zip codes, purely based on old habits, implicit biases, or flawed legacy training.
The danger is that the deep reasoning capabilities of the neural network don't just passively copy that bias. They identify it as a core successful pattern and they amplify it at massive scale.
It locks onto it.
The neural network's weights lock onto that historical correlation. It reasons. Historically, retention offers to demographic A resulted in a 90% success rate, while demographic B was rarely offered the package. Therefore, demographic A is fundamentally the only demographic suited for this premium offer.
It hard-codes your legacy bias into the hyper-personalized anticipatory campaigns of the future.
And because of that overdelegation, because the humans are just rubber stamping the outputs, the incident spirals out of control instantly. The system is pushing actively discriminatory customer experiences at thousands of automated actions per minute.
And it gets worse. This reduced oversight also leaves the system incredibly vulnerable to malicious external inputs, what we call prompt injection or adversarial attacks.
Oh, absolutely.
If bad actors out on the internet figure out exactly what multimodal signals or what specific phrasing triggers your agentic workflows to take a specific action, they can manipulate the AI. They can trick the system into issuing massive unwarranted refunds or bypassing standard security protocols to grant unauthorized access.
And the fallout is a nightmare. You are facing severe legal challenges, immediate brand equity erosion, and total operational chaos before a human manager even realizes the dashboard has turned red.
Exactly. So if we synthesize all of this, we possess this capability for incredible proactive intent prediction that can save accounts before they churn, but the operational failure modes are literally existential.
They are company ending.
If you get it wrong, you cross into a surveillance state, you hallucinate irreversible and destructive actions, or you amplify legacy bias at the speed of light. This requires a completely different governance structure. We are clearly no longer just managing software licenses and updating dashboards.
Not at all. You are governing a digital workforce. You are deploying autonomous agents that make high-stakes, real-time decisions about your customers.
Which means we need a playbook. If you are an executive listening to this, you need a concrete accountability map to prevent these war room disasters from ever happening. We need to completely restructure how operations are governed.
And the research outlines a very specific 5-step anticipatory playbook to do exactly that.
Let's get into it. Step 1.
This playbook demands a radical shift in executive accountability. Step 1 starts at the very top of the marketing organization. The chief marketing officer must define the guardrails.
Wait. The CMO. Not the chief information officer. Not the chief technology officer.
The CMO. Historically, the chief marketing officer was accountable for approving creative assets, managing media spend, and brand positioning.
Sure, billboards and ad buys.
In this new paradigm, they are accountable for the strategic alignment of the AI intelligence layer with the core empathy of the brand. They must provide the final executive approval on the ethical guidelines for proactive outreach.
So they set the rules of engagement.
They are the ones who must define the exact, specific customer journey trigger points where the AI is permitted to intervene and where it must remain silent.
I'm going to challenge that immediately. Because practically speaking, how does a traditional CMO who spent their career evaluating billboard placements, Super Bowl ad buys, and color palettes suddenly start validating AI-driven anticipatory logic? They don't know how to read a neural network model weight. They don't know Python.
They absolutely do not need to read the mathematical weights or the code. They need to define the boundaries of the brand's empathy, its aggression, and its restraint.
I see.
The CMO must look at the technology and say, as a hard business rule, we as a brand will never proactively offer a loan modification based on inferred medical or emotional data, even if the AI identifies it with 99% accuracy. They define the why and the when.
Okay, but why can't IT do that?
If the CMO abdicates this responsibility to the IT department, you get the catastrophic surveillance backlash we talked about in the first scenario.
Because IT is fundamentally engineered to build what is technically possible. It is their job to optimize the system.
Exactly. IT will build the most efficient, hyper-accurate prediction engine possible. The CMO must be the one to define what is socially and morally permissible for the brand to actually do.
Okay, that makes sense. The CMO sets the philosophical boundaries. Then we move to step 2. The head of customer experience designs the human-in-the-loop architecture.
The CX head is accountable for the actual on-the-ground effectiveness of these automated flows. They take the CMO's high-level philosophical strategy and translate it into specific operational pain point triggers. They define the hyper-personalization segments based on user journey mapping.
And crucially, they are the ones who hard-code exactly where human agents must physically intercept the AI.
Yes. They look at the entire customer journey and build the safety nets. They say, okay, the AI is allowed to autonomously draft the retention offer. But if the account's total lifetime value is over $100,000, a human account executive must physically read the draft and click send.
Or, the AI is allowed to dynamically adapt the tone of its support responses. But if the multimodal analysis infers a severe distress or high anger emotional vector, the AI must stop communicating immediately and route the ticket to a senior human escalation manager.
Exactly. The CX head designs those exact thresholds.
They build the circuit breakers. So we have the rules and we have the circuit breakers. Step 3. Product innovation leads. These are your CRM and AI product owners build the multimodal plumbing.
The product owners are strictly accountable for the technical deployment. They take the CX architecture and make it a functional reality. They're the ones selecting the appropriate models.
So they might use Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet for fast, low-latency routing of simple tickets.
Right. But they route the deep 200-page legal contract analysis to Claude Opus. They're the ones who have to design and build the incredibly complex multimodal data pipelines required to actually ingest the massive video files, the raw audio streams, and the unstructured Slack data.
Because it's not magic. You have to physically move gigabytes of audio and video data from your customer portal into the AI inference engine in real time, without massive latency. They are building the workflows within the existing IT ecosystem. They are connecting the API pipes.
Exactly. They lay the plumbing. But the data flowing through those massive pipes must be pure. Which brings us to step 4. Data and AI engineers govern the truth and mitigate bias.
This is where we prevent that third disaster scenario, the bias amplification. The engineers are ultimately accountable for model accuracy and ensuring the system aligns with the established rules.
Their job changes completely. Yes, they must still fine-tune the models on your specific enterprise data. Yes, they must ensure strict data privacy and encryption within the workflows. But their most critical, entirely new responsibility is interpreting the AI's internal reasoning logs.
They have to become AI psychologists.
Essentially, yes. They must actively hunt for hallucinations and embedded systemic biases before they scale and cause damage. They aren't just looking at the final output the AI generates, they are actively auditing the AI's internal chain of thought.
Checking its work.
They are reading the AI's scratchpad to understand why it decided to offer a discount to one customer and not another. And if they spot discriminatory logic forming in that chain of thought, they must physically adjust the system to strip it out.
And finally, we reach the foundation. Step 5. Legal and compliance enforce constitutional AI.
In this new paradigm, the legal department undergoes a massive transformation. They transition from being a reactive afterthought, the people who just review the terms and conditions right before launch, to becoming the central structural foundation of the entire AI architecture.
The research notes specifically state that legal must build robust frameworks around Anthropic's constitutional AI, but we need to break that down. What does constitutional AI actually mean in a mechanical operational practice for a corporate legal team?
Constitutional AI is a fascinating mechanism. It means ensuring that explicit written ethical guardrails are structurally and mathematically embedded in the AI model's core instructions. Think of it like this. Constitutional AI allows you to give the neural network a literal constitution, a written set of rules and principles it must follow above all else.
Like Isaac Asimov's laws of robotics, but for corporate operations.
Exactly. You give it principles like always choose the response that is least likely to discriminate based on age or gender, or prioritize the protection of the user's personally identifiable data above fulfilling the user's prompt.
So how does that work mechanically?
During the training phase, a secondary AI model constantly reviews the primary model's outputs against this constitution. If the main model tries to output a biased or non-compliant response, the constitutional AI basically slaps its wrists and physically alters the mathematical weights to reject that behavior. It bakes your corporate rules into the very neural pathways of the system.
And legal has to define those principles. They must ensure algorithmic transparency. They have to ensure adherence to incredibly complex, shifting data privacy compliance standards globally. And for high-stakes interventions, especially in heavily regulated sectors like finance or healthcare, this step is absolutely non-negotiable.
Right.
If the legal team does not explicitly bless the constitutional framework, the agentic workflow simply does not deploy.
Period. It doesn't ship.
Okay. Let's look at the whole board. We have the CMO setting the empathy guardrails. We have CX building the human-in-the-loop safety nets. Product is building the massive API plumbing. Data engineers are actively auditing the chain of thought for truth. And legal is enforcing the mathematical constitution.
That's the playbook.
If an enterprise actually manages to execute this complex 5-step playbook flawlessly, we arrive at a highly uncomfortable, deeply disruptive reality about their current enterprise technology stack.
This is the controversial take. The elephant in the room that no major software vendor wants to talk about. This is the unavoidable structural consequence of moving the core intelligence layer out of your systems of record and into a model like Anthropic.
Let's aggressively debate this premise, because it's massive. The research boldly states that this shift to deep external reasoning will inevitably render traditional multi-million-dollar legacy CRM platforms to nothing more than dumb pipes.
It is the uncomfortable truth of the next decade of enterprise architecture. The CRM, the platform you have spent years customizing and deploying, becomes a mere receptacle. It's just a bucket for data input and data output.
A bucket.
The true strategic value, the core business logic, the intricate workflows, the competitive differentiation of your company, it all systematically migrates out of your legacy CRM environment and resides entirely within the Anthropic-powered intelligence layer.
I am pushing back hard on this, because if I am a CIO listening to this, I just spent $100 million and 3 grueling years finishing a massive legacy CRM transformation. My entire organization lives in that interface. Are you seriously telling me that this massive investment is already a legacy liability? That the massive vendor landscape, the huge multi-year licensing deals, are about to collapse into just being a basic SQL database?
Yes, and I will explain exactly why. Because look at the architecture we just spent the last 40 minutes describing. Where's the actual reasoning happening? Where is the deep thought occurring?
Well, in the intelligence layer.
Right. It is not happening in the CRM. The CRM is just holding the structured customer record. It's holding the name and the address. Where is the multimodal intent prediction happening? In Claude. Where is the dynamic, tone-shifting workflow generation happening? In the external agentic layer.
But the CRM vendors are fully aware of this. They aren't sitting still. They're building their own AI. Every single one of them is releasing their own copilot and their own proprietary agents inside their platforms.
They are, but they are fundamentally structurally constrained by their own closed architectures. They are built to optimize and protect their specific proprietary ecosystems. Anthropic, sitting outside of those walled gardens, reasoning across multimodal siloed data from every tool you use, not just the CRM, but your Slack, your AWS logs, your financial software, has a vastly superior holistic context window.
It sees everything, not just the CRM data.
Exactly. And look at the agentic capabilities like Cowork we discussed earlier. These tools are designed to bypass traditional SaaS user interfaces altogether.
Right.
They don't need to log into your expensive marketing automation platform to click buttons and generate an insight. They hit the raw API, extract the required data, reason over it in their own massive context window, and then push the autonomous action back down into the system.
They skip the dashboard entirely.
The interface, the beautiful dashboards and buttons that you pay millions of dollars a year to license, becomes completely irrelevant to the AI.
You are essentially saying that the niche SaaS solutions, the highly specific point solutions for things like sales analytics or static marketing automation, face structural existential danger.
Absolute structural danger. Because an autonomous intelligence layer doesn't need a UI. It doesn't care about your dashboards. It needs raw data. Your legacy CRM is rapidly becoming a very expensive, very rigid digital filing cabinet. The brain, the actual engine of your business, is now external.
That is a staggering paradigm shift for enterprise IT.
Yeah.
It completely rewrites how budgets should be allocated. Which brings us to our outro. We need to leave the listener with highly actionable, immediate steps based on this new, slightly terrifying reality.
Yes, let's get practical.
If the CRM is fundamentally becoming a dumb pipe and the external intelligence layer is taking over the strategic value, what do we actually do when we walk into the office on Monday morning?
You need to initiate 3 critical pivots immediately. Action 1. Re-architect your enterprise as a system of intelligence. You have to fundamentally stop building and optimizing for data storage and manual data entry.
So stop tweaking the CRM interface.
Shift your entire engineering philosophy immediately to an API-first design. Your priority is no longer paying consultants to customize the colors on your CRM interface. Your top priority is building secure, high-bandwidth, robust AI integration layers so that models like Anthropic can instantly access the raw data they need to reason across your entire organization.
Action 2. Overhaul your data infrastructure. We spent a lot of time talking about multimodal intent prediction, analyzing video, audio, and text simultaneously. That requires a massive continuous flow of real-time data.
Exactly. You cannot execute sophisticated multimodal reasoning on stagnant batch process data that was updated at 2 in the morning last night. It's useless for intent prediction.
It's too slow.
You must invest heavily today in scalable data lakes, streaming analytics pipelines, and edge computing. You need the physical infrastructure to be able to ingest text, high-definition audio, video support calls, and live sensor data in real time. If you don't build that pipeline, the intelligence layer has absolutely nothing to think about. It will starve.
And Action 3. Upskill your customer experience teams into AI orchestrators. We have to actively transition our human workforce from being reactive problem solvers to becoming strategic, high-level supervisors.
You must mandate upskilling immediately. Your CX teams need to fundamentally change their skill sets. They need to learn advanced prompt engineering, practical AI ethics, and deep data literacy.
They aren't just reading scripts anymore.
They are no longer going to be spending their days manually answering password reset tickets or copying and pasting retention templates. They're going to be managing, auditing, and guiding the digital agents that answer those tickets. They become the vital human-in-the-loop safety net we talked about in the playbook. They are the governors of the machine.
So, to summarize the battle plan, re-architect your entire stack for intelligence via APIs, completely overhaul the data infrastructure to support massive, real-time multimodal inputs, and aggressively upskill your human workforce to govern and audit the machines.
It is a fundamental, ground-up operational pivot. It changes everything about how a company interacts with its customers.
And it brings us right back to the war room where we started. You're sitting there on a Friday afternoon. You're looking at that multi-million-dollar dashboard. The little health circle is glowing bright green.
But now, after understanding how deep reasoning works, you know that green is a dangerous illusion.
It's nothing more than a surface read of the past.
Just a lag indicator.
So we leave you with this final, highly uncomfortable question to lull over with your executive team this week. If your traditional legacy CRM vendor decided to completely turn off their user interface tomorrow, if the dashboards just went dark, does your newly built intelligence layer actually possess the deep context to know what your customer truly wants? Or have you just been renting a very expensive, very beautiful dashboard this whole time?
Think carefully about where the actual brain of your operation lives.
We'll see you on the next edition of The Deep Dive.